First of all, I'm Mike Mathis. I've lived my entire adult life in Gillespie area. My background is after high school, I served a tour of duty in Vietnam, 68, 69. Gave back to my country. I was also gave back to my community as an alderman and a mayor. And I've worked as a job counselor, and I've worked in a coal mine. So I've got a varied background, and I think that gives me a really an advantage in a lot of ways to not be from a static point. That I've been around the horn. I know what the district needs and doesn't need, and quite honestly, I'm running because I think those needs aren't being met. I think we have a representative Bourne who's not taking a stand on 115 issues, 115 votes she could have taken and didn't. And I think the other thing is when and I'll say this, and I might say it a couple of times, but I think it's important. As mayor of Gillespie, when I first became mayor of Gillespie, one of the first things I did was form the Macoupin County Mayors Association. It was made up of 27 mayors, I believe, and they were from all walks of life. They were Republicans, Democrats, and independents. And we would meet at Gillespie about every 2 months. We shared ideas, we shared equipment, we shared grant information, which is very unusual, because in most instances when there's a grant that comes up, you want to hurry up and put your name in and try and get it, but we shared that. During the 12 years that I was mayor and that I was president of that organization, not once did it ever come up, are you a Democrat, are you a Republican, are you an independent? Because it didn't matter. We had the same problems. We had the same wants and needs. I think the same can be said in the House of Representatives, in the district I'm in, and the districts around me. I don't think there's a bit of difference. We need jobs. We need social service programs reestablished. We need to help people. We need to make our schools, the school funding be adequate so everybody has a chance. So those wants and needs are the same across the board. There is no reason, and I truly believe this, there is no reason that I can't sit down with representatives from both sides in the same areas that we're in and work together to try and get those issues solved. I think that's what we should be doing across the state. And I think that's, honestly, I think that's what the public wants and deserves.
Well, you mentioned school funding, so let's just talk about that. That's a
Sure.
very inequitable system.
It is.
Do you have any ideas how to fix it?
Listen, I think Senator Menard has a bill that speaks eloquently to that. And in essence, the bill says that funding should be on needs of the students, not the zip code. You know, my thing is that my opponent has never addressed that issue up until this point, when she's signed on to co-sponsor that in the House, and that's a good thing. But for 2 years, we didn't hear anything about schools. We didn't hear anything about jobs. That's what this district wants and needs. That's what the state of Illinois wants and needs. We should be working on that harder. So I think his bill is an excellent bill. I think it just needs to move on and get voted on and implemented. We have to have that. And if you're talking about schools, I think there's other things that we should be doing. I can remember, and I'm sure many of you can, the industrial arts programs that they used to have. I think that we can, with little funding, reach out to people in the community to help sponsor that, to help teach industrial arts programming, like if it's automotive, if it's carpentry, if it's anything at all to do with getting a job after school. I think we can reach out to those people to help teach it and coordinate it. And we can do that within multi-school districts. Those were programs that everyone used to have. Not every kid, not every young person is going to go to college. We get that. So if we can direct these people, the kids that are graduating, into certain job areas, I think that's going to do two things. One, it's going to give them a one-up when they leave school. And two, I think it's going to bring more jobs into the area because we're going to have skilled people ready to go. I will go one step further. I have tried and will continue to try to work out an agreement between a local nursing home and our school district to train CNAs at the school level. And there are openings right now for trained CNAs to go into nursing homes, work a couple of hours after school, work on Saturdays and Sundays, because we don't have enough CNAs to stay there, and that's a job that you can get burned out very quickly on. I will also say that when I was a job counselor, I had people that were CNAs that went on to become LPNs and RNs, and that could happen there as well. It's just a common sense approach to getting things done. I, for the life of me, can't think of why we're not doing that already all over the state. We should be doing that. We should be cooperating with businesses to train our students to be able to go there. And when we say that, and I don't mean to talk too long on one subject, but one thing that disturbs me is when I do a lot of door-to-door, I come home late, and I go into convenience stores. And what you used to see in convenience stores was young people in there waiting on you. Now I see older individuals that have to be there to supplement their income, working the second and third shift. That's a tough job for them to do. I think we need to address the issue of that as well. There has to be a time when people can retire and feel safe in their retirement and be able to live a good life. And that's why the property tax freeze is so important. Most people that pay property tax, it's almost like you're paying rent again. It's so high and it's all over the place. Those are issues that should have been addressed a long time ago, should be addressed today.
So let me just follow up on that. So you would support a proposed property tax freeze?
Yes. Until we get the inadequacies out of it, we have to look at that. It's a hard thing for someone to be working minimum wage and trying to buy a home, making a payment on a home, and having to pay a property tax of $1,000 or $1,200 a year. You know, that makes or breaks a family. And so consequently, we have families that are working, both people are working, or one's working and one's working two jobs. Makes it very difficult. So let's look at those. Those are things that should have been done a long time ago.
So then, just to dig a little bit deeper on that, there are caps on property taxes.
Yes.
You know,
right.
That really limit that growth.
Right.
And those haven't been sufficient, you don't think?
Well, when I'm talking about the assessments that are on certain homes that shouldn't be as high as they should be. There should be, I'm trying to think of the right word. We should be very cautious in how we assess homes.
Okay.
Home values are not just if you build a $1 million home and you got a $1 million home. It's where it's built. It's a lot of other things that can figure into what a house is worth. You can buy a very nice home for little or no money if it's in a depressed area and nothing's going on, right? So well, a lot of times that's not the way they do it. So I think there has to be a fair way to assess it, especially for working families.
So one of the items of Governor Rauner's turnaround agenda is proposing property tax freezes.
Yes.
The contingency with that, though, or part of one of the elements is that it would empower local governments, school boards, county boards, whatever, to kind of change the way collective bargaining is done. Because without those property tax revenues, it would make it difficult for school boards to negotiate anything, any kind of an increase for teachers. So is that the kind of property tax freeze restriction that you'd support?
Well, first of all, I think that No. Let me just say this. I think there's other things that we can do to supplement a property tax freeze. I think we have to look at that. First and foremost, we can close corporate loopholes. We have corporations that pay little or no taxes to the state of Illinois. We can increase the tax on millionaires and multimillionaires who percentage-wise pay less than a middle-class family. And I think we've given corporations, and I'm sure you're more familiar with this than I have, that we've given corporations incentives to come to Illinois and to bring their business here. And then after those incentives are gone, they leave. I think there should be a provision that if you come to the state of Illinois, corporations, and we give them incentives, and we should give them incentives to come here. But if they leave, they should pay those incentives back because they're not keeping up to their part of the bargain. I think those are kind of ideas that can offset when we freeze property tax and use that money as well. I think those are avenues that we need to look at.
So just to clarify, you're in agreement with the governor that property taxes a freeze needs to be looked at. You just disagree with how you offset that and how you get there.
Right. I would say that's true, and I think that the freeze, in my mind, is to go through and look at the inadequacies on both sides, lowering and raising. And I think that's going to help a lot right there. And then we have other things that we can do. Listen, the governor said one thing, and I agree with it. We have to tighten our belts. We have to do that. And that has to start now, not later.
You've mentioned inadequacies a couple of times. I just want to make sure I'm clear on what you mean by that. You said look at both lowering and raising. Could you give us more information on that?
When property taxes are assessed, they're assessed by individuals within the counties. And I think they need to be schooled, and they're doing a great job, but they need to be schooled on exactly what to do. It's got to be uniform across the state of Illinois, and I don't think it is. So I think once you address that issue of how to assess a property correctly, with all things considered, then I think you're going to have a little bit more equal base. I think some things are going to go down. I think some things are going to go up. I would say there's a lot of people building homes today that look like barns, right? And some of those aren't getting assessed correctly. So there's ways we can do things.
I'm curious, given your background as a local official, there's been a lot of talk about Illinois having too many units of local government, and that's contributed to our fiscal problems. Do you agree with that assessment? And if you do, where do you see the problems and how would you address it?
Well, first of all, units of local government, we're talking about cities and counties, and that's the way our state was set up. It's worked great. It's worked great. Does it cost more? Anytime you incorporate and bring entities together to form one being, you're going to cut down somewhat on money, but you cut down on other things too. You cut down on service. You cut down on knowledge. Those are things that can't be disregarded. Every town is unique. Every town has certain problems that aren't the same as others, and to group them all together, I think is a disservice. Money is always the factor in the state of Illinois. I think the other factor is doing hard work and reaching out to all sides to work on it together. Again, I go back, if I can and did as a mayor bring 27 people, which is just a small amount, together, why couldn't I do that on a state level? What would be the difference between my district and someone else's district on either side? Don't we have the same problems? I will tell you this, if you go down to Mount Clair or Madison County and St. Clair counties, if you go down there and if they get a big plant coming in, that helps the whole surrounding area, including Macoupin County. So we all have a vested interest to work together to get things like that done. I want to see that happen. I want to see the bipartisanship to make Illinois great again, to make it function. I know it's money problems. I think I think in 2011, I heard, I hope this is correct, Senator Verdonio say that we've got to quit kicking the can down the road. And I think that's what we've been doing. We have a lot of smart people in state government. I think if we sit down and work together, we can solve a lot of these problems. I was going to an event, and I stopped on Route 138 in Macoupin County, and there were a bunch of trees planted there. That was in June or July, and there was a bunch of trees planted around there. There was, I think it was about 18, and it must have been done a couple of weeks earlier, because when I saw it, 2 of the trees were already dead, and 4 looked like they were on life support. So I looked up the bill, and they had planted trees throughout the districts. In this particular district, it was $90,000 for trees. $90,000 for trees, and we don't have money for Meals on Wheels. How do you do that? How does that happen? You know, are we not looking at the budget close enough? I know it's a massive effort, but it has to be done. There are things that we can cut. You know, the governor said something, he's absolutely correct. We need to tighten our belt. But we don't need to tighten our belt at the expense of the most vulnerable people.
Obviously, there's an issue in Illinois right now with the budget stalemate. In your opinion, who bears the bulk of the responsibility for the situation we're in?
Well, I'll tell you honestly, I go door to door every day. I talk to people. One of the things they talk about, and one of the things I agree with, is that if we did this last second budget gap proposal, they should have stayed there. They should have stayed there, the General Assembly and the governor, and worked on it until they had a budget instead of breaking. So if you're saying who's responsible for that, I would say everybody. Everybody wanted to leave. Everybody should have stayed there. People are hurting, not only in this district, across the state of Illinois, and we're not doing anything about the budget. But Meals on Wheels, it's been cut in many areas, sometimes down to 2 days, 3 days. And I may have said this already, that person delivers Meals on Wheels, sometimes that's the only contact they have. When they take that meal, they usually cut it in half, and eat half for lunch and half for supper. And so when they miss one meal brought to them, they're out 2 meals. They missed it twice, that's 4 meals. The state of Illinois can do a lot better like that than doing that. We have to look at the people in need. We have to look at the budget, but we can't do that if we're not sitting down and working on it. They get a salary to do that, then let's do it. Simple as that.
So do you have, or have you heard any ideas about how this stalemate might be resolved? The question is kind of, how would you picture what the deal is?
Listen, I think when Governor Ronner was first elected, I believe he had talked to Governor Jim Edgar, and I think he gave him some very good advice. Reach across the aisle. I think that's what we have to do. I think Governor Edgar is exactly correct. I think he did a wonderful job doing that. We need to reach out to people. There is no difference, and I've said this a couple of times, there is no difference between the wants and needs of someone here in Southern Illinois, Central Illinois, or Chicago. We can all work together. And part of that is up to the governor to bring people together. I think he can do it. I truly do. He just has to go forward with that. Good advice from a good governor, Jim Edgar.
Well, let's talk about Speaker Madigan, because your opponents tried to tie you to him.
Tried.
Yeah.
Tried. What, with about 15 flyers going out. Yeah.
Do you think Speaker Madigan, talk about his role in all this?
Well, I think anyone in leadership has a role in what goes good or bad within the state of Illinois. So I think they have to take ownership on both parts. And certainly that would include the governor and Speaker Madigan. But again, I may be naive, but I think we can work things out. I don't think this is about egos. I think this is about serving the state of Illinois, and we have to do that. I think both people want to do it. They just have different agendas. Let's work on a common ground. We're not serving anybody. In fact, we're doing a disservice. And I'll just go by my district, the 95th. There are people that rely on those services. Meals on Wheels, breast and cervical cancer, testing for women, MAP grants for needy students, kids in poverty. You know, my opponent has 115 times never taken a stand on those issues. You know, not yes, not no, not maybe, never taken a stand. And that's not what a state rep or anybody that runs for office. You have to take hard votes. To me, those weren't hard votes. I don't know why you wouldn't take them. You can say you want a balanced budget, but you don't want a balanced budget on people's backs that are hurting. I think that we need to get back up there. We need to set in there and get the job done. I'm telling you, people think this is ludicrous and crazy in that district. And I got to assume that the people sitting here feel the same way to some extent.
So you've mentioned that a couple of times. Are there a couple of examples that are especially bad in terms of her missing those votes or not taking those votes?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. I think we didn't hear anything about school reform until Senator Menard came up with a good idea. And then she's on board for that. I never really talked about it before then. I think I don't hear her talking about why she missed 115 votes.
So what's another example of those, out of those 115, where she missed a vote that was egregious?
Egregious. I've got them here. 115 votes. And those votes are on social service programs, meals on, I'll go through the Meals on Wheels, cervical cancer and breast cancer testing, MAP grants for students, kids in poverty, fire grants for local fire departments. The list goes on and on. You can't be in office and not take a position. You don't get a buy on that. And when you do abstain or not be there or just don't vote, then why are you there? Why are you there? I would not be here today if she was doing her job. I will go further than that. I will go absolutely further and tell you this. And I want to make it perfectly clear. When that process was going on to choose somebody to take Wayne Rosenthal's place, there was a gentleman, Roy Hurdle, from Montgomery County, that had a great background, has been a public servant, has done a good job. He should have been chosen to do it. If they wanted to choose somebody to do it and do it right, why not choose him? Why did we choose somebody that was 22, had no experience, and was still in school? And it's proven itself. It's proven itself that she doesn't know how to work for the people in that district. That's what they're saying. That's what I'm saying. And that's why I'm running. Again, if Roy Hurdle had been picked, I probably wouldn't be here.
How do you think we might manage the state's pension obligations?
I think that's a horrendous problem. I would say this: we have to. The state made a deal with these people, and they made a deal to keep their part of the bargain. They didn't do that. The people that were working kept their part of the bargain. So I think we need to look how we, first of all, let's look how we're going to do it in the future. Let's figure that out. Are we going to go to 401k plans? Are we going to keep a pension plan? Let's figure that out. And I think they've said very, very eloquently that get everybody at the table to try to figure it out. You have to do that. But they have a contract. They have a contract that they should have kept and didn't. They were supposed to pay money into that. And no one's ever asked where that money actually went. I think that's part of it. If it went for the trees, then I say we did a bad deal. You know, Those retirees can't eat trees.
How are we gonna ever catch up, though? How do you see that happening?
I think that there's a lot of things that can do that. I think that we can attract new businesses here fairly quickly if we can get together and start working together. We're not going to get anything accomplished unless everybody sits down at the table and says, hey, we're going to stay here until we get it done. And that's what they should have done back when, before the start of the summer. I think that's the first and foremost thing we have to do, is get everybody back in Springfield and say, let's work together. Let's get focus groups, let's get both sides together, let's mix them up. Let's don't make this Democrat or Republican. Let's make this people in the state of Illinois want to do better. Simple thing. I've done it in my life. I think they can do it up there.
Workers' comp has been an issue that has gotten a lot of attention. The governor feels that that's something that has to happen, changes to it going forward in order to attract business, in his view. Do you agree? And if so, what do you think needs to happen?
I think workman's comp is self-regulated, for the first part. It's strange that we're not talking about more safe working conditions. I worked in a coal mine, and I had to drive 90 miles. It was a 90-minute drive to get to work, a half hour to go underground, and 8 hours working, the same thing in reverse. So it was a 12-hour day. 12-hour day, 6 days, 5 to 6 days a week, sometimes 6 days a week, mostly 5 days a week, and shift rotation. It was a great job. Did people get hurt down there? Yes, people did get hurt, but not to the degree that you would think, because they made the working conditions as best they could. So if we're talking about workman's comp, let's talk about working conditions first and how to make them healthier and safer. I think if you do that, it cuts down on the issue of workman's comp. I think that's the first way you reform it. And we have separate commissions to look into workman's comp and to award that. I think that they probably do a pretty good job.
Kind of keeping in the coal mining vein, they just kind of announced this morning some settlement. What's the Longwall mine outside of Hillsborough?
Oh yes, with the fire.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's closed essentially. What?
Right now it's closed.
Right, and it looks like it will be. I mean, it sounds like the company's decided that investment isn't.
I've heard both sides. I've heard both sides that they're going to do it. Look, Illinois has the largest supply of bituminous coal in the United States. At one time, we had a lot of coal plants going, but then we run into EPA regulations, in which case we have to use the scrubber, and the scrubbers are very, very expensive. What I would like to do is get the coal industry together with the coal miners in part, and the people that have the scrubbers and state government to sit down in a room and say, how can we open up more coal mines efficiently and safely? Because, look, Illinois coal burns very high BTUs, so it's a good coal to burn. The problem is getting the toxins out. The scrubbers do that. A byproduct of scrubbers is actually oxygen. So I think if we got everybody together and worked on a way for a lease-to-own program for those scrubbers, we might be able to open up more coal mines. And that's just me, a former coal miner, thinking about it and thinking it through. There's a lot of people smarter than me in government that should be thinking about that. But that's what I'm going to do when I become a state rep. I think that helps brings jobs to Illinois. Hundreds, if not thousands of jobs. And subsidiary trucking industry, the rail industry, all benefit from that. I think we can do it.
Many believe that we're going to need additional revenue to get out of the situation that we're in. Do you support that? And if so, give us examples of where you would find it.
Well, I think if the state were flush with money, they would still say we need additional revenue. I think everybody does that. Even if you're working, I need additional pay. I'm not sure where we can get it. I know they've proposed expanding gambling. I don't know if that's a good thing or not. I don't know where else they're going to expand it at, because everywhere I stop, there's gambling devices. I think, see, we go back to short fixed items, short-term items. I want to go back to jobs. If you want to fix the economy in Illinois, let's get people working, people spending money. I think that's the right thing to do. It helps everybody out. It's a long-term fix. So let's work. Look, when I was working as a job counselor, they had a program called the Job Training Partnership Act. It was state and federal funded, and what you would do is have people come in, and you would try to get them jobs. And I would tell you a story about a young man who came into me. He was just turned 16, had a hard life, and wanted a job, and couldn't get one. Needed a job, not just needed a job for clothes. It didn't need a job for a car. He needed a job for food for his family. And I didn't make. I pleaded with the city of Gillespie to take him on in the street department, and they did. He did a great job. He worked all that summer. They brought him back the next year. They wanted him again. And the third year, his last year of high school, he got that job again. That helped him put food on the table for his family, helped buy him clothes. Came back to me. He said, Mike, I need a job. I need a full-time job. I worked to get him a job over in Litchfield. Did not see him for the next 25 years. So I wanted to put a roof on my house. And this guy comes down with this nice truck, had a couple of trucks with him, and assessed what I needed for my roof, and told me the price. And he kept staring at me. He said, "You don't recognize me, do you?" I go, "No, I don't. You look familiar." He said, "Will you help me get a job way back when?" And he gave me his name. And he says, "I can't thank you enough for that job." I said, "Well, I was just doing my job. I was doing what I was paid to do. I thank you for doing the right thing and following through on it. You're to be thanked." Those are the kind of job training partnership acts that we should be doing right now. Here's how it worked. If someone came in and wanted a job, and I could find a job for him, that entity would get half his salary paid by the program, and they would only have to pay half of it. So it was a win-win for that organization, and it was a win-win for the person. It was a federal and state program that actually worked, and now it's gone for lack of funding. We need to revisit that. We need to get that going again. We need to go back to the things I said about high school, industrial arts programs, and CNAs. Those are simple fixes that don't take a lot of money or a lot of time. We get people working in Illinois. We get more income tax being paid. You know, simple, very simple.
What about the broader level beyond individuals finding jobs? What do you think needs to happen to attract companies and businesses to either stay in Illinois or relocate or come here?
Sure. I think one thing is we need to sell on our workforce. We have talented people, and I think we're going to show them that we're creating more talented people with programs at our school level. So I think that's the first thing. Second, we have a workforce that's ready to go. We have land that's available. We have water that's available. We need to push those things. We need to go out and reach out to them and have them relocate. We need to have industrial parks where there is an incentive to be there. So sure, we have to offer them incentives, but they have to move there and stay there. I think we need to be proactive on that, more proactive than we are right now. We're in a state, look, when the state of Illinois is financially sound, then financially sound businesses will move here, right? So we've got to clean up our act, and then we've got to move forward.
What parts of the turnaround agenda do you think would work, if any?
Well, listen, I think term limits is a good thing. I've even went so far as to say I wouldn't mind seeing term limits on leadership positions too, which I think would help. So term limits, independent map redistricting, so that when you're sitting next door to your neighbor having a cup of coffee, he's in one district and you're in the other, that doesn't make sense. So have that done independent. And the property tax freeze, I think, is a good thing. What I don't agree, and those are things that the governor has proposed, so I agree with that, but what I don't agree with is cutting the vital services that people rely on too. We can't do that. It has to be a check and balance.
With social services, when you talk about vital services, talk about how you determine what programs are vital. What might be vital to me might not be vital to you. What might be vital to you, I might say, well, we could live without that.
Sure. Well, I think first you have to look at all of them, and you have to look at who's most vulnerable by them. Who's going to be hurt the most if that is cut, or is anyone going to be hurt if it's cut? We're talking about a massive amount of work to do the things that supporting. I cannot believe that on both sides of the aisles, there aren't other people that feel the same way I do, that don't have the same issues. And I go back to bringing them together. I want to meet with downstate legislators to see what they feel is that we can do together. Democrat, Republican. This is about the state of Illinois. This is who we are. This is where we live. We can do better. So let's cut out the politic part of it. Let's start working together. That's what I want to do. And I think that's how we decide on what vital issues. I don't want to cut any vital issue. What I call vital is ones that impede a person, that can be life-threatening, that can be life-changing. Those are the vital services that we have to keep going.
So your opponents received a lot of money from the state Republican committee, and what's your relationship with the state Democratic group?
I don't really have a relationship. I know that they've paid for some of the flyers that I have, and I would tell you this, that I have the right to nix those flyers if I don't want them, and I've done that once already. Saying that Representative Bourne is in lockstep with the governor, I think is an easy thing to say, and I believe that. I think some of the things that they say and have done are demeaning and not right in all instances. I don't think that that's cute. It's not funny. Politics aren't meant to be that way. Let's get serious about it. You know? I would say this: I don't believe I'm a puppet. I don't believe I'm a sheep. You know, things that they do like that. I think that's high school stuff.
So that you, other than the pamphlets or mailers, do you have guidance on the campaign? Do they say these are some things you maybe need to consider or talk about? Or
Look, I've sat down with a lot of people, educators, working people, small business owners, manufacturing plants in our area. I ask them what they think the wants or needs are. Do people offer me their advice? Sure. But you know, in the scheme of things, I think it's better to go to the people that are living it, doing it, having to work, to see what they're doing. I don't miss an opportunity to talk to someone that's working, whether it's in a convenience store or whether it's on a production line. I want to know what's going on in their lives. I think that's part of my responsibility. It's a simple thing. A lot of people have opinions, you know, but I like to get the opinions from the people that matter.
Just doubling back real quickly, you mentioned term limits.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think are reasonable term limits
You
that
know,
you would factor?
Here's my problem. I think 8-10 years, right? But my problem is, how do we stagger that so that we keep people in there that know the process, that can teach the other people coming in? You know, I think that's the thing that I don't have a grasp on, and would be the first to admit it. But I'm sure there's people out there, I'm sure there's people in this room that have a better idea on how to do that than I would. It's amazing. Our forefathers that created this nation thought it a hardship to be in government because they had to get back to their real jobs, their fields, their families, their cattle. We've gone a long way from there to where we're at today.
Okay. We're actually coming up on time. So is there any issue we didn't cover that you wanted to talk about today?
This is serious business. It is serious business, and the people involved have to get serious about it. You know, I would not be running but for the fact that the appointee is not doing their job. That's why I'm running. I wouldn't be running if they had chosen, again, someone like Roy Hurdle, that is a good steward of government and knows what he's doing. And again, I go back to, if I could say one last thing, it would be this. Go back to what Governor Jim Edgar said. Reach across the aisle. Said it to Governor Ronner, and I'm taking that advice on my own. I believe that everyone, at least in central and southern Illinois, have the same needs and wants as the district that I'm trying to represent has. And we should be able to work on those together. What's good for one is going to be good for everybody. Let's just make it work.